Hello everybody, Chris FE here. Again, I'm having to re-narrate this because this is about the third or fourth time I've done this because my microphone keeps giving out, and I've changed the USB connection, and as you see it started to work now. And I'll go back a bit, and what I'm just going to talk about is the sensor array, getting this all back together again. It's all cleaned up, and I've cleaned the motor up, and I disconnected the motor from the housing. Not completely, but I left the cables intact because I couldn't remove the cables because they're sort of stuck down. One cable for the sensor, the motor sensor, and yeah, so I'm showing how clean it is inside. Gearbox covers on, but if I take that off now, I can show inside that the gearbox is looking pretty clean. But I was worried about dirt in between the motor and the body, and on the end of the motor, it looked quite dirty. And no matter how much I cleaned it up, there was more stuff getting in. And so there I'm pointing out where the little sensor is, and there's dirt along there, or there was, and I'm saying that the securing screws, there's one there, there's a little slot inside, you get your screwdriver in, but you have to move the opto out of the way, and the other screw is, he says, there, and there's a plate along here which you have to take out, which butts up against the end of the worm drive. There's the other screw head there, and you'll see that in a minute from the photographs I took. Whilst I was doing it, and the opto spins, and I needed to take that out so I could clean inside it. And I used like a cigarette paper with some IPA to get in and wipe it out. Saying there, you have to be very careful with these cables because if they snap or they rip, they're part of the whole assembly of that cable, which routes all the way around the body housing and culminates to the connection of the main board when it goes back into the camera body. So yeah, the sensors are actually stuck on there. The connection, I'm not sure how they're connected via that, but they have to be soldered on or put on somehow. And yeah, it's game over if that rips. You may as well just try and get another housing, and that sits on there, as I say. And so I'm going to show the photographs now. So what I do is give an overview of the shutter mechanism and say how these two screws here, the two wires are quite susceptible. These ones here, yeah, and if they ping off, yeah, you know. So it's just a recap on these two with the motors there. Crack on with that. It opened up, and I show you that pin there that you can manually do with a little thin thing to open and close the shutter. The glass lens there was fine, not a problem. And I'll talk about that. Carry on, and here we are. Here we start with the motor. This is all dirty around here. There's the little optic wheel which turns the optic on and off there, and there the position of the screw. So you have to manipulate that to get to the screws. They're the two screws. Thankfully they weren't corroded. They're made of stainless or something. And above is the plate, and there's a witness mark on the one end of the plate which sits in there, which is a witness mark of where it sits on the end of the little gear there. And the little tab you can see on the other side, the little thin line on that plate here is a retaining clip. Next screen, and you're on time, CJ. And this is before. This is how it looked before. No matter how much cleaning I did to try and get all this out, it was very, very dirty. And again, you can see the cable there; it's very stretched, and I had to clean all this up. I didn't want any of this garbage here getting back into the opto. You'll see on the next photograph how the opto looks. That's where the plate sits in there, which butts up on here with this little nipple. You can see that, for the want of a better word. Securing hole there for the screw, and the next last one's down here, and the screwdriver comes in here. Again, there's a little cable attached there. It's very, very susceptible. Next screen. Yeah, I'm just pointing out again how this cable is a bit stretched. You have to be very mindful of that. All the dirt here, look, potentially getting inside here onto that little opto. So I need to clean the opto. And once I did everything, and I used the camera body, for the motor body, I used this emery cloth. You see all the dirt here, look, which came out of this, off the motor and out of the gearbox housing. Potentially all of this could have gone inside the camera. It looks, it's all spread out now, but it was all on here, inside there, inside this. And to clean let's have a look at there's the screw, you can see there. You have to position the opto wheel out of the way to get access to this screw. The screwdriver goes in here, and the motor is obviously connected around the back by the two holes you saw in the motor body on the previous photo. And I'm just discussing that now, probably. Yep, I think that's enough. Next photo, please, CJ. They weren't corroded. Made of stainless, probably. And there's the motor reconnected. Gearbox looking a lot cleaner. There's the plate I was talking about, which butts up on the end of the little gear there. And there's the opto disc, nice and clean. I did clean out the opto with like I said, with a bit of cigarette paper, and that's how she looks now. A lot cleaner, a lot happier. Hardly any more free dirt around to actually get in and make a nuisance of itself. As I'm showing the C assembly for the sender and receiver of the optic device, which goes right back and gives the signal back to the main board. And if that jams, that stops and errors the camera to say lens error. Yep. And there's the top of the gearbox housing there. If only all gearboxes were as simple as this. It's only one speed though. Next photograph, CJ, come on. And I think, is that it? Yep, I think that's it. And we're back to the assembly now. So take the 3 screws out for the sensor array. Let's swing that on a bit. Yep. He says. Oh, and that's the infrared LED light I was talking about. So the glass plate I've got. So this camera I'm using to record doesn't have an IR filter on it as such. And so you can see the infrared coming from the remote control. You can't see it with the naked eye. And I'm just going to academically prove that the actual glass plate which sits before the CMOS array will actually block that light. Down, there you see it? No, you can't see it. You see it? You can't see it. I think that's a proven point, CJ. Right, and then try the other side, but it's the same. And then put that in with the actual the window, which stops any unwanted light getting to the CMOS array. And voila, that's there sitting in with the glass plate. And then I'll take the screws out now. Okay, I thought I took the screws out before. Swing it on a bit. Now I talk about the CMOS array, and there's that rubber gasket which is there, for want of a better word. I think that actually sealed the screen and stopped any dirt getting in there, which is rather nice. But I did see a blemish. I'm trying to get capture on the camera. Slight blemish on the top right hand side there. Now, if you see something like that, you got to clean it. No matter what. Maybe a Q-tip would be better with some cleaning fluid, alcohol wipe or something like that. I've got a little squirty alcohol IPA, and I'm just very, very carefully dabbing to try and lift off the fluid and to take the dirt with it. And so now what I decided to do is, because that's a bit squidgy now, I decided to take that off and put it into the camera first. sort of bent up a bit. So I put that in, and I'm just again blowing, just trying to actually ease off any dirt. And then when you put this in, it'll only go in one way round, and the cable goes in the same way as that cable there. That's it, I pointed it out. It's obvious, but there's two lugs on the body housing, so you can't get on around the wrong way. But you know, like a true professional, I've got to show you where they are because you won't know. In the light, CJ, please. Yeah, thank you. There you are. There's the first lug and the locating lug there. So you can only go around the right way, one way. It's obvious when you do it, but I suppose it'd be fair enough for me just to point it out. Now, when I do put this on, notice how I put it on. I put it on straight down. I don't do it at an angle because I don't want to dislodge the gasket that I put on there. I don't want to dislodge that in any way, so it wants to go straight down on top of it. And when you put the 3 screws in, yeah, you can actually have a look on the other side, and I'll do that. Yeah, so I have a look at that. Again, just wipe off the plate, and there you are. So that's probably why nothing got onto the CMOS array, because it's all protected by that plate and then the gasket, and that's all ready to go. That's the gearbox housing. So I put the gearbox all back together again. I'll show you there. It's all nice and clean. Keep going. I'm going to use a bit of grease, which is a special type of grease. It's basically like a vacuum grease, which doesn't absorb water, and it's just there to help the gearing with the plate on, so it doesn't, it's not clamped in, so it's enough free to turn. There, I just explain how the gears work. It's not that interesting. I'll just swing that on a bit, and with the gearbox, and I show that when you put the gearbox in and put the array onto the lens assembly, that the whole thing must be homed all the way in. It jumped again. I have no idea why it's jumped. Jump back. This is really playing up. I don't know why. So what am I doing here? I've just jumped back to the gearbox housing, right? Okay. So I'm going to put the gearbox housing in. Let's skip it on a bit. We've already seen that, and I'm not sure why it's gone to there. Let's get to here. It's playing up. There we are. This is where we are. So what I'm explaining here is that the cable for the shutter mechanism should drop into the body of its own volition. Let it go all the way down, and you can do that by winging it out, and you see the length of that cable change as she goes down with the shutter mechanism. And then when you retain it back to the home position, she should be, well, she will, when it's all together, fold nicely internally. And I'm just showing there how it pops out and goes back, so it's in the home position. And now you should be able to freely just push that cable down. It should fold nicely itself, which is what you want it to do under its normal operation when you put everything back together again. And you have to check this, because if that cable snags in any way, then another strip down is going to be required. The smaller cable, which is for the focus motor, it doesn't change its length. Only the shutter, the fatter cable does. And basically I'm going to show how to get the cables there in through the lens end assembly. So basically it's got to go through 2 holes, and what I do is I cut down tape. I put a nice rigid bit of tape on the smaller cable, because I've got less room to play with, and the shutter mechanism I use a bit of thread. If you notice, I connected the tape to the non-contact side of the cables. So I did say if I have trouble doing it, I won't persevere on the camera. I'll just do it off camera and then show you once it's done. And in true fashion, I did have a bit of jiggery pokery problems, and I thought, well, I'll do it off camera, and we'll just swing it on a bit, and there it's done. Now, once you locate the end assembly onto the lens housing, you'll feel it sit down snugly. And again, you align the assembly up with the position of the cable pointing to the right hand side with the motor on the left, and it shouldn't rotate. This is without the screws in. And what I suggest before connecting up the cables is to put the 3 screws back in to secure the array assembly onto the lens housing. So what you don't want to do is connect the cables first and then find you have a problem with the you may dislodge the lens, the assembly on the end, and then put stress on the cables. So bolt it down first before putting the cables into the connectors. And let's just wing it on. You can see as I do that, yeah, okay, that's all bolted in. Now I'm going to just check to make sure it's nice and rigid, nice and clean. Yeah, I could put the lens in, but I'm just going to leave it there for a minute. And now it's a case of having to get the cables in. Now the cables themselves, the gold contacts for the cables actually have to be on the outside as you're looking at it, so you can see them face on. And I'm just wiping that in case any glue, tape remnants on there. And what you should do is with a bit of tweezers, just start it off, and then you can use your fingers just to push them home. Now on the smaller connector, it's just the push fit because it's so small, and there is a little shoulder clamp which keeps it in situ. There, I'll just bring it up to the camera. Just see partially the gold contacts sticking out, but you would think that the contacts would need to be below, but they're not. Intuitively you would think that, but the connections to the connector internally are on the top, hence that's why you see the gold contacts facing outwards. It's not my design, it's the way it is. And there you see that. Sort the focus out, CJ. Now I'm doing the bigger cable, and I think I show you the connector for the shutter housing assembly, and on the end of this cable there is a clamp. Now you have to be very mindful of this clamp. It's very weak, and I've had one example where one has actually separated from the connector, and I had massive trouble getting it orientated and putting it in the right way. It's a bit fiddly, but if that breaks in any way, then again you are scuppered. The only probably way to do it is to get it into situ, hold it down and glue it and hope for the best. And I think I'm talking about the cable dropping back down into the assembly, and it should be nice and free. And I think I do actually push it down, so it should fold internally and unfold naturally. That's why you've got that brown bit in the middle there of that cable, which will allow it to fold. I guess over a period of time that might get weaker and snap, maybe that is a long-term thing with these cameras. And again, there's 2 shoulder guides for it, but there's a hole in this cable and it sits onto a pip, and basically that alleviates any strain on the connector when this thing's running in and out. Bit fiddly, so wing it on a bit. I do get it in, and again I take the tape off, CJ. That's right, okay. And again, this cable is the same. The gold contacts are facing outwards, and I've got to make sure I get that clip up. And probably best, CJ, to hold the cable down while you're doing it. Don't put any stress on that connector now. See, it's starting to lift. Oh, better hold the cable down. And you only need the tiniest of forces to lift that up. As you can see there, it's lifted. But I'm so blind, I can't see if it has. Yeah, that's done. That's done, yes. And now you have to put this cable in as straight as possible. It's not easy, but once you've done it a couple of times, you know how it feels. And then start it off with a pair of tweezers, probably better. Yep, that's right, CJ. Start it off with a pair of tweezers, get it in straight, and then once you feel it grip and it's nice and straight, then you can push it home with your fingers rather than using sharp objects. There you go. And once that's in, probably show it to the camera, do I? Yeah, then oh, that's all right. Don't forget to close the clamp. Make sure it's in. And you've got to get this right. You don't want to strip this down, because if it's not done right, don't hope for the best. Verify. Get into focus, and that's what it looks like. And then I'm going to actually put the cable onto the pip and into the two guides there. And notice how the cable is now inside the camera, and I can't move that lens mechanism out now because it's directly connected to the motor, and it will only move when the motor starts to turn. A bit of tape on my hand there, and hopefully the motor is still okay, and it stopped again. I have no idea why. It's winding up. There we go. What is going on with this video? And there it is. And yeah, so I think this video was about 40 odd minutes long, and I've certainly chopped half of it down by not waffling so much. Now what I'm doing there is I'm just using the straight edge of the blade just to get those, just to get the edges of the cables back in underneath the shoulder clamps. They're not clamp, but guides really, just to stop the cable lifting and adding stress to the connector, as I say. And that is the sensor array connected to the lens housing, ready to go back in. And I'm pretty confident with this one. The proof is in the pudding, so I had to power it up, obviously. And the only doubt I've got for this is that opto, if I did clean it sufficiently. And here's the main body of the camera, and looking at it, I still need to do a bit of cleaning on that. So I'm going to do that the next. Finish off doing a bit more cleaning. Still a bit of debris around there. That cable there is for the side zoom mechanism, so I show that. And obviously I was debating whether or not to desolder some of those wires and separate the flash unit from the main body. It depends on how bad it looks, but it's not too bad because most of the water ingress was from the bottom, not the top. Oh, and again, a bit more showboating there where I put the lens body back in, the lens back into the body. It's still dirty, CJ. I don't know why you did that, but there you are. Yeah. So that's it for part 3, and so hopefully by the time the next one comes around, it's going to be reconnecting the. I'm going to be reconnecting up the electronics board and a complete reassembly, and yeah, that'll be part 4, and that'll be power up. Thanks awfully for watching, and look out for part 4 in the next week. Probably it's Monday tomorrow, so I'm back to it, I'm afraid. All right, thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed that. Bye now.